speaks like a man who knows the truth and is not afraid to speak it.
No more by 2030, only electric cars. Trying to get rid of all fossil fuels. They're literally going to kill people.
The globalists are getting very nervous.
This is ripping the church apart.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Faith and Reason, coming to you, at least I am, from the March for Life in Washington, D.C. We have Liz with us as well as Father, and we're going to be a little bit of a packed agenda. March for Life, of course, we're going to address. There's some great stuff going on at Davos, believe it or not, at the World Economic Forum, Davos Summit, with Javier Milei from Argentina, just with a great perfect submission for the March for Lifetime. Also, we have Trump winning in Iowa and a lot of suggestion that he's going to take on Nikki Haley, and what would that mean? And finally, we have Pope Francis's latest comments with regard to fiducia supplicans, backing it himself for the first time, not acknowledging the retreat vis-a-vis Africa, and then new remarks about hell. Lots of stuff here on Faith and Reason. Stay tuned.
Welcome to LifeSite League. What are we? We are change. We are relentless. We are a voice for the voiceless. We are prayer warriors. We are journalists. We are activists. As citizen journalists, we, members of LifeSite League, contribute stories to LifeSite News from across the world. Christ is calling you. He is calling every single one of us to fight for truth and stand on the front lines with our greatest weapon in our hand, the rosary. The world we are living in is encompassed by evil. It is mocking God, killing babies in the womb, and burning down our churches. And what are so many of us doing? We are standing by in silence. Or worse, we are compromising and joining the devil's army out of convenience. But not anymore. LifeSite News brings to you the League. We stand on the side of Christ. We stand for truth and are ready to transform the culture we are living in. There is no time to waste. There is no time for weakness. Join the fight for truth now. Join LifeSite League.
Liz, your Father, Charles Murr. So good to be with you both.
Hi, everybody. Great to be with you.
Always a pleasure to be with you. Absolutely.
Father, if you could lead us off with a prayer, please.
Sure. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. Rebuke him, O God, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all evil spirits who prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, have mercy on us.
Thank you so much, Father. So we are here at the March for Life in Washington, D.C., and it is incredible. It's always an amazing thing to see so many young people standing for life, and it is young people. Many people wonder, what's the pro-life movement made of? When you come to the March for Life, you see that it is almost all young people. It's an amazing time of there's so much joy. Yes, we're doing something very serious here. It's always in the cold, and yet there is such a great spirit. So that spirit is here again this year, and despite the cold, there's always a lot of warm hearts. It's a great, great movement. We have, from LifeSite's beginning, come down here to Washington to be inspired. And that same March for Life has been replicated all over the world. In Canada, we started with the same year that LifeSite News itself first went online in 1997. It's an incredible thing. This year, we're expecting Representative Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, will be addressing the crowd here, and we're expecting a big crowd indeed. Lots of great pro-life activity. All the pro-life leaders are here, except for some who are with us in spirit for sure, who are normally always here, but they right now are living out their pro-life witness behind bars. Liz, do you want to give us details on the latest from Father Fidelis, from Joan Andrews Bell, and the Red Rose Rescuers?
Yes, I mean, under this really bloody administration is the only way to explain it. We have Joan Andrews Bell, one of the great pro-life fighters, advocates, Lauren Handy, Father Fidelis. They are in jail. They are martyrs for the pro-life cause. The fight continues, doesn't it? Then even if there's a victory in Roe versus Wade being overturned, this administration continues to double down. So through their suffering, and then we know their prayers, they will be with you in spirit, and ask our audience to keep them in prayer during this pro-life month and thereafter.
Absolutely beautiful. You know, we had some news as well from around the world on pro-life, particularly in Peru. What happened there, Liz?
Yes. I mean, there was a lot of consternation that as a result of Argentina passing its first abortion law, that there would be a domino effect in South America. But the good news is that Peru has passed a law recognizing unborn children as human beings. And the argument that the legislators and activists made is that rights flow from Article 2 of the Magna Carta, those rights to life. And so as a result, Peru is taking a strong stand, and it is having a domino effect. We now know that Peru, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, Dominican Republic are all passing pro-life laws in Latin America. And so there is a lot to celebrate. And we also have an interesting development at Davos with respect to abortion. Surprise, surprise.
It's amazing. We have the Argentinian president, Javier Milei, who's actually going to Davos. That was a surprise somewhat because, you know, World Economic Forum is really not the place that we want to see any leaders. And so there was some alarm about that. But President Milei's statement, that was a firecracker. Liz, give us some details if you could.
Yes, you know, we know he doesn't mince words, right? He speaks his mind very colorfully. Well, we're just before airtime today, there was a breaking story on LifeSite News, so I encourage everybody to go there. Argentina's Javier Milei, the new president, addressed the World Economic Forum just now in Davos and denounces the bloody abortion agenda at 2024 Davos. And he said that the socialists at Davos are promoting population control and the bloody abortion agenda since they believe human beings damage the planet. He went on in the special address, I'm sure making the whole crowd very uncomfortable, that another conflict presented by the socialists is that humans are against nature, claiming that we humans damage the planet, which should be protected at all costs, even going as far as advocating for population control mechanisms or the bloody abortion agenda. He goes on, this is amazing. These harmful ideas have taken a stronghold in our society. Neo-Marxists have managed to co-opt the common sense of the Western world, and this they have achieved by appropriating the media, the culture, universities, and also international organizations. The latter case is the most serious, and one probably because these are institutions that have an enormous influence on the political and economic decisions of the countries. Now, this is a speech that we expect the Vicar of Christ, Pope Francis, and popes to give to the World Economic Forum instead of, promoting this global population control agenda, this climate change agenda, which at its heart is about population control. So here he comes in, and he's, of course, on his way to see the Pope, right? He just flew in from Buenos Aires to Davos, and he's going to be meeting the Pope, I believe, this week. These are just, can you see everybody just squirming in their seats? Bill Gates and, all of the population control feminists there at Davos, all the climate change, John Kerry. We're going to post the video so you'll be able to see it and enjoy somebody who just speaks his mind, speaks truth to power fearlessly, and coming from, of all places, Argentina. So what a wonderful surprise. And by the way, another interesting development from Davos is that Jamie Dimon, who is the CEO of JP Morgan, in a press development question and answer, really went after Davos and the globalists, saying, make a big mistake in demonizing MAGA by calling them deplorables. These are people who love America, who love their country, have really been suffering during this economic downturn. And he said, if the Democratic Party wants to win, they better tone down their language. I mean, this is coming from, Mr. Democrat. There was talk that he may want to run for president at some point on the Democratic ticket. So it was, interesting coming from left field, excuse the pun. I don't think that Davos is turning out exactly as Klaus Schwab wanted it to. The theme of this year was rebuilding trust, as if, the trust hasn't been shattered to Timbuktu because of everything that happened during COVID, and the globalist movements with the truckers and the farmers taking to the streets in Germany, in Holland, in Canada, in France. They're taking to the streets, objecting to the globalist agenda. Well, that message has been heard. It's been heard among the globalist elites. And so they're going to try and rebuild trust. I don't think rebuilding trust is going to happen when you have somebody like Javier Milei really calling them out for their, 50-year agenda to destroy human beings and kill babies in the womb. So
it sounds to me that the theme is just a little bit cut too short. Shouldn't it be rebuilding trust that we ourselves demolished?
Father, one of the things that strikes me is this. Javier Milei is often compared to Trump. They call him the Argentinian Trump or the South American Trump. And he's got that bombastic style. He's sort of unafraid to say anything and everything. He is obviously willing, like Trump was, to speak truth to power and to not really care who is listening. Also, there's another comparison. Trump, when he first came into office, surrounded himself with good Catholics. Not just, I'm not only speaking about Pence, who of course is not a Catholic, but with all sorts of Catholics were in the administration in different places, really good folks. And Javier Milei, of course, has chosen Victoria Villarruel, who is herself a traditionalist Catholic of all things, mother of, I think it's like 7 children or something like that. Yeah, just amazing. I'd love to hear your take on it, Father.
I've been following him for years. Milei, he fascinated me. The first time I heard him speak, I had to listen to it a second time because I couldn't believe it. It was so refreshing, just so refreshing. Not that I agreed completely with everything he was saying, but basically, yes. But I also, like you just brought out yourself, his way of getting across a message is fantastic. It is very Trumpian, very much like Trump. And yes, he's powerful. He also has a mean left hook. It's like boom, boom. when you're just trying to deal with the first punch, the second is already in. He's quick, on his feet, and he speaks like a man who knows the truth and is not afraid to speak it. What he is, he's not a typical politician, and this is so refreshing, so refreshing. He really is. He's something. He's something. Expect big things from him. He is intent on turning around the economy of Argentina, and I believe he's going to do it. I really do.
Wouldn't you want to be a bug on the wall when he talks to Pope Francis?
I was going to say I would give anything to be a mosque on that parade. Yes. Actually, some of the harshest criticism that Pope Francis has received has been from Milei. He just brutal, boom, and he gives the reasons. It's not a question of I don't like him. It's not on a personal basis. It's on a political and religious basis. He's got some very good points that really should be addressed and answered.
Particularly the climate change push, making that a fundamental of the religion in a very real way, has created all sorts of consternation among leaders who want to be faithful but recognize, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with Catholicism. It's this is a contentious and so-called scientific theory, that hasn't panned out. Last week with our negative 47 in Saskatchewan, one of our writers had this terrible time at negative 47 degrees. And we were thinking, oh, so much for global warming. We'd like to see some of that in Canada, actually. But nonetheless.
I want to make a comment with respect to Sub-Zero Chicago, where countless electric vehicle drivers found that they were unable to charge their cars during the Chicago cold snap. Public charging stations have turned into really car graveyards over the past week as electric cars died while waiting in line to charge their cars. So we've got a bunch of, as somebody said, dead robots out here. And we know Hertz, I think it's Hertz, and the rental car companies are saying, we don't want any more electric vehicles. I think it's GM that's saying, don't send us any more electric vehicles. And most of the country is under a cold snap. So for all the other reasons, I think electric cars have had their day. I think after this winter, we'll see all of a sudden the gas guzzling SUVs back in style.
But this is the thing. They're actually trying to shut down. We've got various states already saying, and in some countries already saying, no more by 2030, only electric cars. Trying to get rid of all fossil fuels. They're literally going to kill people. What are people going to do without fossil fuels for heating? They're going to rely on the windmills. This is total insanity. But yet that's where we are. It does what people have said with regard to they're trying to kill you. When you look at it in these terms, it starts to make a lot of sense.
Fossil fuels are relied on by the poor in Africa and other really poor countries of the world to heat and to cook. And that, I think, fact of life has been lost on Francis, who every chance he gets seems to decry fossil fuels and the seeking that the Catholic Church divest in its fossil fuel investment.
Coming from Francis, this is the most bizarre. It goes beyond a politician who has some dark agenda with 2030 with the population controllers. When it comes from the Pope and it's the same lines,
the entertainment factor alone is worth it, worth the price of admission.
We did see something strange that I'd like to discuss with you guys. Watch this clip. This is Yuval Noah Harari, who we all know is sort of like the guru of the World Economic Forum. He's discussing Trump, but he almost sounds like this is a good endorsement for Trump. And say what you will about Harari, he's not stupid. So he knows that by saying this line, he's actually giving Trump a real boost. Let's have a listen.
Are you concerned that Trump might be elected again shortly?
I think it's very likely. And if it happens, it is likely to be the kind of like the death blow to what remains of the global order. And he says it openly.
I was startled by it because I know that Harari would know that saying that is going to give Trump a boost. What does that mean? I don't trust this guy at all.
In this hour-and-a-half interview, he was also reflecting on Germany, France, and the Netherlands, those popular movements that have been taken to the streets. And I think the globalists are getting very nervous. And the European globalist movement is also impacted by what they saw in 2016 with Trump. And so they view, and certainly Canada saw that up close and personal. But, this guy's really, I've always called him a Frankenstein troll. He's, weird, power hungry, arrogant. He's kind of the self-appointed arbiter of all that is right. He is the, brains now, the new brains behind Klaus Schwab. I get nervous because I figure they're putting a target on the back of Donald Trump. I don't know if there's some kind of signaling with respect to Trump. Clearly, I think everybody in the national media and probably now in the international media was very uncomfortable by the huge win in Iowa. The huge win. I mean, they can dismiss it, white Christian nationals, et cetera, but it was a tremendous, decisive victory. So I think he's sensing that they have to acknowledge the movement in order to coalesce the globalist forces to fight it. I don't know what these guys are up to. I'm like you, John Henry. I don't particularly trust them saying this, but it's obvious that there's a huge growing populist movement in the world.
The globalist movement, the climate change, the this, the that, it is its own religion. It's a religion. It's remarkable. It's a religion. And the reason that it's not going to work is a very simple reason. But communism works where people have nothing. Communism does not work where people have something. It doesn't work where you're telling people we're going to take it away from you. Then it doesn't work. And all of these people are in the business of taking away. Donald Trump, on the other hand, seems to be in the business of giving it back to you, empowering people, empowering local governments, empowering individuals. This may sound a little bit corny, but really in an American spirit of individuality and of taking care of our own destiny. That's why these people, I think, are very nervous, because Trump and Millet, we were just talking about, these people are out of their control, and they're eon years, light years more popular than they themselves are with their movements. This is going to come to a head real soon. It really is. And we'll see who wins the elections in the United States. I think we already know who's going to. And maybe these last 4 years will have served sort of like what I think Francis is serving for better times in the future. So you have to go through a period of dryness so that you appreciate positive times. And I think this is what the church is going through. I think this is what the world governments are going through. That European nations, people in Europe, the Netherlands to revolt. I mean, this is incredible. The reactions that people have against these people with these oligarchs who are trying to control everyone's life. It's not going to work. Simply not going to work. I think they're figuring that out.
I'm concerned about something. We all know that with Trump, at least in the latter years, we had some real hiccups with a lot of promotion of the LGBT agenda. We had the whole going with Fauci, even when he thought he was wrong, and we had the lockdowns and everything else. There was stuff that went on there that was really negative, as well as a lot of positive stuff. But right now, it seems like there's serious consideration of taking a running mate with Nikki Haley. That would be an absolute disaster for life, for family. She's a rhino through and through. Liz, if you can give us some details about Nikki Haley.
Sure. One of the things that concerns me, other than a lot of her positions that she is taking, is her big donor, Reid Hoffman of LinkedIn, the CEO of LinkedIn, is one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. It's also on Epstein Island. So there is a great deal of, doublespeak from Nikki Haley. I think that will be exposed soon. But, Trump picked Pence, and Pence turned out to be, a traitor to certainly Trump, and I would say a Republican really in drag. I mean, he was not very energetic nor really promoting the Trump agenda. And interestingly, they did some entrance polls of during the Iowa caucuses, and the number one concern of the voters is illegal immigration at the border. And Nikki is very, very weak on this issue. And also 71% of the Trump voters said he was fit for presidency, even if he's convicted of a crime. Which, God bless him. He flew into 30 below weather during the Iowa caucus, went back and forth. Then after winning, the Iowa caucus by 51%, DeSantis came in second with 21% and Haley with 19%. She was expected to beat DeSantis handily. The next day, he has to go to court in New York to fight these fraudulent charges. I mean, it's just, and his mother-in-law just passed away. It's just a tremendous amount of pressure to be in a presidential campaign and fighting all this Democratic lawfare. I think it's important, to really do due diligence on Nikki Haley. I think that also the pro-life movement needs to be very active in the Trump campaign and with Trump himself to continue to have those major victories, because we know the abortion advocates are fighting tooth and nail in every single state to pass abortion constitutional amendments. So we need to not only have the White House for what happens in the Supreme Court in the next 4 years, but we also have to ensure that all the progress we made with Trump, that we continue to build on it. And one of the things that I think is mistaken is this narrative that gets pushed by the mainstream media is that abortion is a losing cause for the Republicans, and that the suburban moms are single-issue abortion voters. We've got to take that on. We have to spend money advertising proudly the importance of saving babies' lives.
And we have to review what happened during the midterms. During the midterms, they just won Roe v. Wade, and all the Republicans decided, let's just be quiet. And that was the worst possible thing. They had every pro-life answer developed over the last 50 years that they needed, all chose to be silent. And in the face of silence, you have nothing but to lose. They have to take on all of this because the Democrats are good. Abortion is their sacrament. They're not going to leave it alone. So we've got to deal with it. And, Liz, you were saying we need to keep on Trump and keep giving him the assurance of our support, but also to encourage him in life, in family, and also to protect faith. And no one did that better than Vivek Ramaswamy. He got out of the race, but his little speech in front of Trump, for Trump, to endorse Trump was just wonderful. Let's take a listen to that.
Ramaswamy. Come on up, Vivek.
We are in the middle of a war in this country. That's what this is. It's not a war between black and white. It's not between Democrat and Republican, even in a deeper sense. It's between the permanent state and the everyday citizen. Between those of us who love the United States of America and a fringe minority who hates this country and what we stand for. And right now we need a commander-in-chief who will lead us to victory in this war. That's what we need in this country. You got to know you're in a war to win one. You can't win one if you're asleep at the switch, have your head stuck in the sand like most Republicans. And I think that's going to require somebody who isn't bought and paid for, a businessman, not a politician. Anybody heard of that? And that is why last evening I met my friend here. We met in person, and I told him that I would endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States and do everything in my power to lead us to victory in this war. It is a 1776 moment right now. We do have some enemies that we need to defeat on the other side, but we have challenges to address in our own party right here at home. So you know what? If you want somebody who's going to foist onto you to use your social media account, you want to use a driver's license to do it, to have the right to use the internet, this man's not your man. There's another candidate in this race who'll do that for you. It's Nikki Haley. You want to cut Social Security, you want to cut Medicare, you want to cut veterans benefits so we can fork over more money to Ukraine so some kleptocrat can buy a bigger house? Vote for Nikki Haley, not this man right here. But if you want to actually put an agenda that puts Americans first, to say that the moral obligation of your leaders is to the citizens of this country, not another one, there is not a better choice left in this race than this man right here. And that is why I am asking you to do the right thing as New Hampshire and to vote for Donald J. Trump as your next president, because we're not working with a lot of time here. There are two genders in this country. Period. That is the truth. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the greatest form of governance known to mankind. Capitalism lifts us up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in the United States, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We fight for the truth.
I thought it was amazing, positive pressure on President Trump. What was your thoughts?
I thought it was very positive. As a matter of fact, he can speak quicker than I can think. It's fast. It's amazing. It's amazing. I love listening to him because he's just it's amazing. He's got his ducks in a row. Also, you know, Liz, to what you were saying before, there's something else to add to that. I believe that President Trump learned an awful lot, a tremendous lot in his 4 years in office. And I think that I know, because he's a fantastic and sharp businessman. He has to be incredibly practical. I know that he learned a lot from that, and I know that he is not going to repeat some errors again. He's not going to do that. If he wins, God willing, for me anyway, that's my opinion. If he wins, I think things are going to be a little bit different second time around. I think there's going to be less politics, less accepting a vice president because the party wants it or because this group. I think he's done with that. I think he's done with that. And I look forward to his 4 years. I really do. I think they're going to be fantastic.
Well, I'm just hoping that he will take a page from Javier Milei and how he addressed Davos on abortion. And he needs to understand that rhinos like Nikki Haley will turn on a dime. And he knows that. Hopefully he will be go on to some other, supposedly he has plans of having a woman on the ticket. And I think Trump watches Milei, and he's going to see, that bold statement at Davos and maybe get competitive and want to be equally bold on this issue.
Especially since the international community is calling Milei a mini Trump. Of course, I'm sure that got his attention, Trump's attention. And he's watching.
One of the things that, should Trump capture the presidency, he'd need to deal with would be the international scene, which is a total mess. In addition to Ukraine, Russia, which continues, the war in the Holy Land is just absolutely horrendous. But on the Ukraine-Russia deal, we have new news from this week in that Zelensky has called for troops from Europe to come and enter the war. Liz, what's the latest there?
He's invited to speak at Davos and is asking for direct military intervention of European countries into Ukraine. In speaking about the Russia-Ukraine war, he said, if anyone thinks this is only about us, this is only about Ukraine, they are fundamentally mistaken. He claims that military action by European countries will shorten the war in Ukraine, prompting actually the real question is, will it expand the war into Europe? And Klaus Schwab applauded Zelensky's comments. We're deeply grateful, he said, to you and the Ukrainian people for defending values which are at the core of international systems and at the heart of liberal democracy. And he also said, no question that Ukraine remains firmly on the path of European integration as a result of you and your government's policy. Now, he said that despite the fact that Zelensky has targeted the Ukrainian Orthodox Church with, terrible unjust discrimination, seizing church property, evicting monks from monasteries. I think he's suspended elections. He also arrested a man by the name of Gonzalo Lifa, the Chilean-American filmmaker and Zelensky critic, who was arrested in Ukraine for reporting on and justifying, the Russian aggression. And Lira died recently in a Ukrainian prison under very mysterious circumstances. Also, Zelensky, I didn't even realize this, I miss this, has asked the occult artist Marina Abramovich to be the ambassador for Ukraine. I mean, this woman is, we're never going to go into her. She's just, you've all seen her. Just look her up. She's a monster. His democratic values that Klaus Schwab was praising, I think really need to be scrutinized.
I'm not going to opine. I'm not in favor of what's happening in Ukraine, and I'm not in favor of its war. I don't have much faith in its leadership. Let me just put it that way.
There's no good guys. No one's saying Putin is a good guy. And just like in the war in the Holy Land, you've got massive suffering. There seems to be a genocidal plan on both ends. And it's actually terrible. So these things are going on. It didn't happen under Trump, by the way, but we'll see what that brings. We really got to pray for President Trump as well, that he does the right thing here, because a Trump presidency that goes down the road of a Nikki Haley and starts to compromise with the left will be every bit as bad. And it could actually, should he go down that road and still faint to the right so that he gets the popular support for doing, the economic rights desire, you'll have what we had in Canada with our so-called conservative government, which was fiscally conservative and socially liberal as all get out. So it was the most pro-abortion regime, the most pro-same-sex marriage regime, while at the same time, and according to people sort of in the middle, yeah, they were jerks. They killed kids, they killed the family, and they were also tightwads at the same time. So, I mean, that's the worst of all possible worlds. But there is also news from the church. Unfortunately, let's start with the good news. The good news is the Pope had to capitulate with regard to Africa on fiducia supplicans. We know we had the African bishops come out en masse and say no. And I hope the church learned a real lesson. When good, holy bishops stand up and say no, as Bishop Strickland right out of the gate begged his brother bishops, just say no. There comes a time when you have to say no. And so many said no. So many, especially in Africa, said absolutely not. We reject this in totality. And right out of the gate, they tried, the Fernandez got on there and said, no, you can't reject it in totality. They actually did. But they tried to massage it. And then what came? Well, then came the agreement with the Africans, where the Pope signed on to allowing them to say, nope, the continent is not going to do same-sex couple blessings. Period. End of story. Francis agrees. So it was a capitulation. And sure, it said, and we support the Holy Father, of course. But it was real capitulation. And God willing, for the whole rest of the world's conservative, if you want to call them that, I just call them Catholic, bishops, should be a message saying no works, saying sticking, and we shouldn't even say saying no. It's saying yes to Jesus Christ. It's saying yes to the truth. It's saying yes to the faith of our fathers that we can't abandon. And it's your responsibility. By not standing up for Jesus Christ, his faith and his truth, you are killing us. You're killing our children. And I know a lot of you think it's better to keep your head down, just be quiet, this is going to end soon, blah, blah, blah. It works to stand up. I beg you on behalf of children everywhere, my own children included, please stand up for the truth of the faith.
Here we have a document that is not being applied equally throughout the universal church. We're going to surely have bishops that punish and cancel priests who refuse to do the blessing. We're surely going to have bishops who refuse to impose their priest to do the blessing be canceled by Francis. This is what you call a Hagen Leo, make a mess, as Francis is very familiar with saying. He's made a mess. There is chaos now in the church. There's confusion. Is this not de facto schism when you have a document such as this? Now, Francis has affirmed it. He has come out and said, those that don't understand, obviously those that don't go along with it don't understand it. Read it again. I'm just very concerned about the message, of course, that this is sending throughout not only the Catholic Church, but the world as a whole. And also for this document to come, 2 years after there was a very clear denunciation of same-sex marriage blessings or same-sex blessings by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and signed by Pope Francis. What is this schizophrenic attitude that is going on here? 1 minute, yes, next minute, no, depending on who. The head of the CDF. Learn the lesson from the African bishops who speak out in unison. Just learn, why, our bishops are, silent, scandalous. We finally had 2 priests from the cathedral in San Francisco saying, we're not going to bless these same-sex couples. 2 priests, along with, Bishop Strickland. I mean, that's about it, in the United States. Certainly some priests have issued statements in their bulletins, very brave of them and courageous, but the hierarchy is missing in action yet again.
Father, I'd like your take generally, but I want to specifically also address one of the things Liz just said there. Very, very important, I thought. Look at the non-universality. Look at it's supposed to be one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. It's supposed to be the same thing in Africa and in America and in Europe. And yet here is a major division. In Africa, they're not doing these same-sex blessings. It's exactly the same as Amoris Laetitia. Do you remember in Amoris Laetitia, we had Poland, where divorced, remarried could never receive Holy Communion because it's a mortal sin. And yet, across the border in Germany, oh, absolutely, divorced, remarriage communion, no problem at all. You're welcome. You're accompanied. It's the same thing now.
Yes, and it is very much, as far as I'm concerned, and I've given it a lot of thought and a lot of prayer. It is diabolical. The reason I use that word is precisely because a diabolical comes from diaboline in Greek, tearing apart. It is the contrary of symboline, putting together. This is ripping the church apart. And what I have a real hard time with is I cannot bring myself to believe that this is being done by accident. And that's the problem that I'm having as a priest, and I'm not alone. I'm in contact with any number of priests and some bishops. And we're all of the same accord. This is not an accident. This is happening on purpose. These are not mistakes being made. These are calculated risks to some degree, but as long as it divides, as long as it separates people and separates the faith and tears things apart, then it's good. I've never seen anything like this ever. I've never seen anything like this in church history, by the way. And I'm a pretty good student of history. I love history. I've never seen anything like it. It's very troublesome, very troublesome. The one thing, John Henry, that doesn't bother me so much is that the majority of the bishops are not raising their heads and raising their voices. They've always been quiet. I told you, didn't I tell you with the father and his son who went to an Episcopal consecration, and the little boy was curious about everything that's happening, and he's watching the ceremony. He says to his father, what is this? He said, what's that? He said, well, that's a mitre. The bishop puts a mitre on his head, gives the bit pop up. And he's explaining everything else. And then they were going for the laying out of hands on the bishop. And the little boy said, now what are they doing? And the father turned to him and he said, now, son, this is a very important part of the ceremony. They are removing his spine. I'm sorry, but I have very little respect for many bishops. It's sad, but I don't see them as men with spines. If they did, they'd talk. They'd be Augustine. They'd be John Fisher. They'd be men of integrity and speak up. They're all so afraid. I talked to a bishop not long ago. He's afraid to speak up. I said, afraid of what? I don't know. Anyway, these are hard times, and they are being purposely made hard times. I see hope down the road, and that would be in a new election of a new pope. And I think it's going to be quite different this time, because I think the majority of the electors in the upcoming conclave do see that there's a problem. They do understand. They're afraid to speak, but they do understand. I think in the moment of voting, the last thing they're going to do is vote for a continuation of this. It'll stop, I believe. I really do. I'm hopeful that it will. I just hope it's sooner than later.
I'm troubled by something, and I don't mean to dump on you, but I needed to say this. One of the easiest explanations, to my mind anyway, is that, like Bishop Schneider has said, he's Pope, yes, but it's sad. We have to pray for his conversion and so on and so forth. But it also is helping the church end its papolatry, end its reliance on the Pope for everything and hang on his every word. I started to think about that because that's been said by so many of the people who I admire, Peter Kwasniewski, Bishop Schneider, a lot of these people who said this. That is very, very, very troubling. Because basically, if the Pope is only protected to be right when he makes an ex cathedra statement, the last one we had was 1955, never in my lifetime. If the only thing we can look to the Pope to get right is that means the Pope then becomes like every disappointing bishop we've had for so much of our lives. We never know what to believe. Every Catholic becomes like a Protestant, not really knowing what's right, but having to decide for themselves. Yes, you could say you know the tradition of the faith. Well, you do. You should know your catechism. But all these things come up. And what are we to make of them? And the answer, I don't know. We just have to see what? for an ex cathedra statement and all these things. It's driving me crazy. It used to be, we believe in the ordinary magisterium of the Pope and of the Church, and people give their assent of mind and will to the ordinary teachings of the Pope, not just ex cathedra statements. So all the exhortations, the encyclicals, the motu proprios, they're all there. They can guide you. You can trust them. You can just let yourself be led by the Pope. What do? Right now, we can't. Look at Amoris Laetitia. If you've already done the mental gymnastics for that, you can't do them around the Acta Apostolicae Sedis. Look at Gaudete et Exultate. Look at the changes in the Catechism on the death penalty. Look at Fiducia Supplicans. You have 5 documents that are supposed to be, and I'm not even including the motu proprio that destroys the Latin Mass, Traditionis Custodes. What is going on? I'm sorry, Father Durant, but it's just all solutions are very unsatisfactory to me anyway.
I don't know if I brought this up before. Just a little story. Quick one. Mother Pasqualina and I had a great friendship. One time I went to go visit her, and she pulled out from her sleeve a sort of a pamphlet paper that some Austrian couple who had just been there to see her friends from the past had given her. And it was, and I'm sure you've seen this, it was 2 pictures of Pope Paul. And it was an accusation that they had kidnapped the Pope and put in a new Pope. And the new Pope was an imposter, right? She hands me this, and I looked at her, and this is an intelligent woman, Mother Pasqualina, right? And a woman who also knew where all the bodies were buried. And so I said to her, I read it, and I said, I had seen it before. I said, Mother Pasqualina, you can't possibly believe this. She said, oh, not for one moment. Not for one moment do I believe it. No. That's not the point. The point is these poor people, they so much can't believe what's happening in the church that they're looking everywhere for an explanation. That's where we are today, in spades. I mean it. We're all of us, not just you, John Henry, not just you, Liz, not just me. Everyone who's trying to be a good Catholic is trying to figure out what in the world is going on. Now, I'm speaking quite frankly because you asked me to speak frankly, right? I'm going to. I believe that in the future, right now, I don't know what to tell you except hold on. And I've told that to every Catholic that I know, and I got some telephone calls when this blessing matter came out. I've got to tell you just one thing about the blessing matter that bothers me. Yes, it bothers me. Am I going to do blessings? Absolutely not. It's out of the question, the whole thing. But what bothers me is that not that much outrage was given to the Pachamama. That was a sin against the faith. That was a sin against the faith. This is a sin against morality. Faith is much, much more important to me. When I see an idol being brought into St. Peter's Basilica, I get my blood. I was ready to explode. I could not believe what an insult to God Almighty. The whole thing is wrong. What's got to happen sooner or later when we get done with this valley of tears, and it is for any devout Catholic, this is very troublesome, very troubling. When we're done with it, there has to be a resolve made by the church that this cannot happen again. That this cannot happen again. The body of Christ cannot be put through this a second time. Why it's happening right now? I believe it because it has to happen. For whatever reason, God has willed that this happen for some sort of a purification and some sort of a better understanding of the church as his mystical body. And you'll see there will be positive ramifications of this in the future. It's terrible to go through, but I do not believe it's going to happen again. It will. No, I can tell you, it will not happen again. These are horrible times. This is a horrible situation. We have no real leadership. We have no real leadership. And the way we were educated, and you just touched on that, John Henry, the way we were educated was we're to respect these bishops, we're to respect these cardinals, we're to respect the Pope. At the same time, they're putting us in a position where they can't be respected. It's almost like the priest who's caught with his fingers in the till, stealing from this or sexually abusing this or that. But he loses his credibility. It's gone. This is what's happening on the level of the faith, which is it's the most serious thing that I can imagine. More bothersome than anything else is that it is not by accident. I refuse to accept that any longer. It is not by accident. This is being done on purpose. And that's it. Here. I've also looked at this, if I may. I've been doing some serious thinking. I really have. And especially in these days, I don't know what it is about these days. Well, since he came out with the blessing nonsense, had everything gone well from the Second Vatican Council and had everything been interpreted in the light of tradition, we would not be where we are. Nothing has been done that way. Nothing has been done in the light of tradition. We're talking 60 years of a lack of light of tradition. And this is the conclusion. Here, this is what it ends. This is how it ends. It is not going to get any worse than this because it can't. And it will get better. So I just tell everyone, please hold on, wait, take this as a personal and a collective penance for many things. We as a church, we have a lot to do penance for, especially especially in our recent history. It's a time for penance. Maybe this is the penance God's giving. Whatever it is, we're to endure it. We'll come out of it, and things will change. Not because I say so, because they have to. No one is going to put up with this any longer. This is the worst that's ever been. And I've spoken to bishops and priests galore. Everyone says the same thing, but also everyone is afraid. It's incredible. It's incredible. That's where we're at. But I really am hopeful, because this is not going to last. But there's an old saying, an old Spanish saying, no hay mal que dure 100 años. There isn't an evil that lasts 100 years. My mother used to say that too. Whenever she was a little bit upset, she would always say, Charlie, remember, it's the first 100 years that are the hardest. We'll get through this. We will. You'll see.
Thank you, Father. Liz, last word over to you.
I think it's our job as the laity to draw up a bill of particulars against this papacy so that none of the things that have been done are forgotten. Certainly as a reminder, the upcoming conclave, whether it's in 10 months or 10 years, is that they never, ever forget that this man came to the seat of Peter not believing in hell, which is a direct an absolute farce in the face of the Blessed Mother at Fatima, who taught the children the prayer that my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, and the children who saw hell there. So I would encourage everybody to do one thing during this cold winter. If you can, get this book. It's called The Book of Gomorrah. It's the life, the writings of St. Peter Damian about a very, very difficult time in the church, a time when there were many, many bad popes and a lot of scoundrels, as Father knows. And his writings on this issue of fiducia supplicans, on this issue of the immorality in the priesthood and in the church and in the culture as a whole, are so clear, so Catholic. I think you will get such an education. I mean, none of us read this when we were in high school, college. I mean, I didn't, Father, maybe you did in the seminary. For a time like this, I would encourage our listeners to pick up a copy, share it with your prayer group. It's edifying. It's chilling because we've had times like this before, but it was a time where saints stood up, right? Saints and martyrs, and where the laity stood up, most especially. And so I think there's a lot of lessons we can take from, I think it was 1058-38 in the time of the church. So that's kind of my final message for everybody.
Beautiful, Liz. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Father. So good to be with you both. From me here at the March for Life in Washington, D.C. God bless you all. And we'll see you next time on Faith and Reason. Hi, everyone. This is John Henry Weston. We hope you enjoyed this program. To see more like it, be sure to hit the subscribe button below to get all the latest